There is, Pastor, don't disappear. Where are you going? Yes. He was so on task that he was thinking. Now, there is a dollar store in Japan, and they have keychains, so he deserves a sushi keychain with the egg sushi in case he doesn't like raw fish. Because he doesn't have relatives in Japan, so I can give him these things. Ed has relatives. No, that's just a... But that's from the dollar store in Japan, so that you can you can remember that the dollar store has fun things over there. Okay, I'm going to do technology here to see how well I can not do technology. So, good morning. Not daylight savings time yet, so a few more weeks and people will be looking at me like, good morning. My name is Roberta Peabody, and there's familiar faces and not so familiar faces, so we'll see. I'll kind of cover some ground that some people might know. But my connection with Pocasset goes back to 1989 when I moved back from Bible College in South Carolina, and I lived in the house on the hill. So that was just 2 years before I left for Japan. But Pastor Ed was my pastor right after I became a Christian in Baldwinville. Now, if you don't know where Baldwinville is, go head towards the Berkshires and you'll find it. So I was raised in the church, but I really didn't know anything about missions or how that applied to me. I was just a church kid, but nobody ever explained things to me as a kid. So when I came on this home assignment, I'm very much a fish out of water. I'm not in my usual element. Unless I dream in Japanese or Skype somebody in Japanese, I don't speak Japanese when I'm here. So, but one of the hosts that I'm staying with had an interesting question for me, because when I wrote my brochure, I didn't put a Bible verse on it because I just simply forgot to do it. And so she challenged me to look at a verse as far as what relates to my ministry and see, ask the Lord to show me a verse that would encourage me as I head back to Japan in July. And the verse that I looked at was John 8:12. Jesus said to the people, "I am the light of the world. If you follow me, you won't be stumbling through darkness because you will have the light that leads to life." Now, if you know anything about Japan, it's a very dark country, and the statistics are very staggering about Japan. Now, I have an infographic, which, if we do the technology right, it'll work. I'm a person that can't walk and chew gum, but I want to show you this because it's very interesting, as long as Xfinity doesn't want to come on. It's like things that happen without your control. But one of our new missionaries made this infographic. Okay. This is really interesting because I know these things by heart, but one of our new people coming out did this. And actually the population's even higher than that now. And Newsweek magazine likes to say that Japan is going to go extinct by 2050 because of the low birth rate. But 0.5% evangelical Christians. And that's after a lot of contact with the Christian message. And the church growth, this is where it gets into what I do, is minus 0.4%. That's because of an aging population and lack of Sunday school. And so there's less children, and so there's less young adults in the church, and it continues on. I was in a church. Amy met the widow of the pastor that I worked with for 5 years, and their church, the average age was 70 years old. And I know many pastors that even after standard retirement age, pastor basically until they pass away. So it's a hard situation. So Japan is fully modern. But then I saw this new statistic, which I don't do statistics often, but one missionary for every 64,244 people. That's a little daunting. When I came to Japan, our mission had 120 missionaries. Now we have barely 60. So even this percentage of 34% down in 20 years, well, our mission has gone down 50%, but we've got new people coming. So depending on where you are in Japan, these numbers of one church for every 16,000, if you're in Tokyo, that number would probably be a little bit less than that. But the attendees per church, that's right on target. When I was helping out at a little church while a missionary was on furlough, we had about 37 people. So, and 10-year church growth rate is 1.2%. So that other statistic, it depends on where you are and where you're counting. Tokyo would probably have 6% Christian, or if you get into other parts of, 3%. If you get into other parts of Japan, it'd be minus something percent. So, and so as far as unchurched cities and unchurched towns, you can see the darker colors are the metropolitan areas. So large metropolitan areas, or Western Japan even has a section that's quite well churched. Hokkaido gets that color just because there's less people. So, and this is types of ministries, and I teased the young man who made this graphic. I said, I guess I'm other, because what I do is not education, not maybe targeted demographics, but I do something that is not as common in my mission. So, thank you, Ed. So there's some of the things that people are doing, and Team has just had our first couple come to Japan as businesses ministry, which in other countries is the only way you can get in. But we have a Japanese man who's a Canadian citizen, and he and his wife are doing businesses ministry. My ministry, as far as returnees, is not listed in this, so I tease the person constantly who made this. But the big challenge is Japan is a thoroughly modern country, and it's probably one of the most least reached people groups in the world. And so even though you have the statistics of everybody being Buddhist or Shinto, basically they're materialistic, secular people, and religion doesn't really come in until weddings or funerals. And only 50% of church members attend church regularly. And there's a lot of this because of some of the family pressures if you're the only Christian in your family. And the only day home that your husband has is Sunday. And school events, school clubs happen on Sundays now, just like the States too. And women still make up the majority of church attendees. And I have a lot of friends that are Christians, but their husbands are not. And in fact, my best friend and her daughter became Christians in Ohio. And when the husband was transferred to work at a tire company in Ohio, and her daughter wants to be baptized this year. Her daughter's 11, and basically what she said to her daughter is, you have to tell Dad. So the little girl has to explain her faith to her father because he's the head of the household, and Daddy has to kind of be on board with her being baptized. So once she tells her father, the next step is, the harder step even, she has to tell Grandma and Grandpa that she's being baptized. So even for a little girl, she's got to learn how to explain her faith. And Amy and I were talking about this earlier. Japanese is one of the hardest languages for foreigners to learn. But it's really, really important to learn the language. I was not a good language school student, but I was able to work in a ministry that gave me the time to learn the language. So there's, praying for Japan, giving, going, sharing. There are probably Japanese students at Cape Cod Community College at some point. And so that is, this is what Caleb and Beth made. Caleb grew up in Japan. So I'm going to put the paper over there for a minute. So what I do is a little different. I work with Japanese who've become Christians in the States and go back to Japan, helping them find church fellowships, helping them find other Christians just to be with as they walk through their faith. And what's really challenging is if you don't really connect somebody within the first few months of when they come back, they will flounder a little bit in their faith because the company structure in Japan is so busy that they get so busy with life, and if they have family pressures, they get really quite stressed out. So, but I had never thought of being a missionary. I was going to be a social worker, and that's what I was going to do, and that's what I told God I was going to do. I was a very stubborn young Christian. But I think what changed it all is when Stan Delacour gave me the invitation to come to Japan just for a summer to teach English at a Japanese Christian church, and then you can go back and pick up your social work career. You know, it was very gentle bait. And I think what happened when I was there as a young Christian was it was really challenging because I was physically sick, I was homesick, my parents were daughter sick, and I couldn't communicate. I was a highly educated state college graduate and went to Japan, and communication went out the window. But the relationships with the people that I worked with at the church were really precious. Some of you have heard this story before. I had a translator for all the English classes. And when I was very lonely, I'd say, Mana, let's go pray. And she would pray in Japanese, and I would pray in English. And I think that was the first time as a young Christian, because at that point, I had maybe been a Christian for about 5 or 6 years. That was the first time I understood that God understood her perfectly and understood me perfectly. Before that, I had no sense of anything outside of my small town. So the story shortened is I work with TEAM, the Evangelical Alliance Mission, and I work with Japanese students who were international students here, and also international students. It kind of dovetails and overlaps quite a lot. I did other things with TEAM before, and I think most of the people in my mission group were kind of surprised when I changed from working at a supportive ministry with a Japanese publisher to working one-on-one with people quite a lot. And Returnees, I have this wonderful picture in my photo albums of returnees. And it's like you can never really picture who a returnee is just by the fact that you look at their face. There's a whole story behind their life. Some of them are Christians before they go overseas, and once they've had that international exposure, they're much more passionate about their faith and much more passionate about reaching their own people. I have been mentoring a girl in Hawaii, a Japanese girl in Hawaii, for the past year. And what's really interesting is she's studying travel and hotel management in Hawaii. It's really great that she's in Hawaii anyways. But she is very passionate about serving in her Japanese church in Hawaii. Well, we were at Urbana, InterVarsity Missions Conference this December. And after that, she told me she wants to return to Japan to work with international students in Japan. So she's thinking outside of the box. She's not just thinking of going back to her home country to reach Japanese. She wants to reach international students from her experience of working with people in Hawaii. So that's really exciting. And, you know, there's the English Bible class that I've done with the ladies. It was really hard to find a substitute for while I was away to do that, but the ladies are still meeting together, and they find a substitute teacher, a missionary, or another one of my friends goes and teaches them something from the Bible that they can take into their daily life. And the ladies have been gathering for 3 years. And the way this started was after I got back to Japan in 2011, just about 40 days after the earthquake and tsunami. I was working at a disaster relief agency, and my coworker, who is now my best friend, she said to me one day, because she's the mother of the little girl that wants to be baptized, she said, I have a dream. I want to start an English Bible class like the one where I became a Christian in Ohio. And when a Japanese returnee says to me, I have a dream and a vision for this ministry, and says, will you help me? I have rarely found a time to say no, because it's just really, really exciting. Because if I can encourage them in their dream, they will encourage other ladies to make that step to become Christians. So in fact, when I packed up to come here, I had to arrange my apartment, and one of the gals that helped me pack up my apartment was a girl from the English Bible class, and she's probably the most Buddhist of the group, but she also went to the Franklin Graham Crusade. So she's listening. She just hasn't made that step yet. So I have pictures back there of her. So the surprising thing about returnees, or Japanese in general, or international students in general, is they're 60% more likely to become Christians out of their country. In Japan, there's all sorts of pressures and there's all sorts of stuff going on, but get out of your element and have the stresses of culture shock, and then they're more likely to become Christians. But if they're not followed up, 80% of them are likely just to throw away their newfound faith when they go back. So it's quite a happening thing. Now, for me, I was working with another missionary that was doing international student ministry, but team saw that it was a little different because I was working in Japanese and the other guy was working in English. So from 2 years ago, I've been associate staff assigned by team with Japanese Christian Fellowship Network, which I'm the only non-Asian face that's associate staff. So everything's in Japanese and all the meetings are in Japanese, but my accountability, monthly accountability, is bilingual. So there's an interesting thing about people coming here. A number of weeks ago, I visited the Boston Japanese Christian Church in Somerville, and we had a lot of visitors that day, but 2 of them were from central Japan, from the Toyota car company. And one of them was going to be coming, married men with children. They were going to one's coming to WPI in Worcester to study, and the other gentleman is coming to Harvard to study for about 2 or 3 years. And they're bringing their entire family with them. But for some reason, I don't think the 2 gentlemen are Christians, but I think the wives sent them with marching orders to find a church, Japanese church, in Boston. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in July when they come. So somehow they figured out the trains to get there, and I was really excited about that. Now I have an interesting picture. I call this, wait a minute if I can get it. If Xfinity would stop talking to me on the screen. Okay. I don't know what it's doing up there. Okay, this is what I call my lovelies. This is December's trip to Missouri. This is, of course, InterVarsity Missions Conference has 17,000 people in attendance, but this is where the real fun happens. This was the nightly worship with the Japanese students. And about 50 students came. And actually some non-Christian students came, and I said to them, why are you at a Christian missions conference? Oh, my friend invited me. So I'm waiting to hear the rest of the story, whether those young people actually believed. I'm kind of in the middle. If you do the Where's Wally thing, I'm kind of in the middle. But these are some wonderful people, and I've met some of these people over the years, and this is my family. These are the people that God has called me to be with. And I mean, our conversations go from English to Japanese, and nobody calls me by my real name because I have a nickname in Japanese. So these people, every night we would worship in Japanese after the huge meeting, and these are the future. I don't know if my pointer will point. No, my pointer won't point. But the young gal that I've been discipling or mentoring is also in this picture as well. So, and this is view full screen. These are some of my friends. Now, the picture in the middle may surprise you. Becky from Uganda. Becky was part of my church in Tokyo, and then she went to Wheaton College in Illinois, and now she's heading back to Uganda. But I did not know she was going to be there. She did not know I was going to be there, and we met. So some of these people, the girl up the top in the center, I knew her as a junior high student when I was at Mrs. Ishikawa's church. And I had no idea that she had gone into high school student ministry in Japan. So it's very interesting. So these are different people that I've connected with. And I tell you, it's an amazing thing making connections with the different people. And the thing about going back to Japan for Japanese, a lot of them get busy. There's this very interesting Chinese character for busy, and it basically, if you take it apart, it means lose heart. And so when a lot of people go back to the regular life there, they lose heart. And so I'm trying to help stand in the gap with those people coming back by being in an international church and connecting people. Even as I got here in December, I was getting emails from different people wanting connections to different churches and different fellowships. And even this week, a complete stranger emailed me and said, I have 3 high school students going back to central Japan. Can you connect me with something in their area? So rather than try to connect with churches, I'm trying to connect people with people. Because if you just give a church name, it's kind of cold. But if you say, call my friend Joe and go to coffee with him. I'm sorry, was there a Joe back there? I didn't. Well, do call Joe, okay? Ed reacted so strongly to that. So, but there's a person-to-person connection. And one of my dear friends in Japan with team, she said, you have the spiritual gift of connecting. And I'm thinking, okay, give me chapter and verse on that one. But apparently, God has given me the ability to meet people and connect people and remember who people are. So I have to drink a lot of coffee some days, but it's really interesting that I work with such a younger group of people, but nobody cares. And it's interesting because even with the English Bible class ladies, even though they're married with children, and I'm not, there's still such a really special connection. I'm still following up on the Franklin Graham Crusade in November because there were 5 of the English Bible class ladies who were there. And the reason to invite them to just a meeting to hear a speaker probably wouldn't work. But I went outside of my comfort zone and joined a gospel choir, which is never a style that I've ever done. And the whole thing was, I'm in a gospel choir, please come. And that worked. They came. And one of the ladies who'd been really struggling in her 2 years back from America, she recommitted her life to Christ, and she hopefully she found a church right after that, and hopefully will be continuing to attend church. But if I hadn't been in the gospel choir, they probably wouldn't have come. And it was a small gospel choir of 1,300 people. Yeah. And I was extremely ill that day. I had vertigo, nausea, and whatever goes with the inner ear stuff. And my prayer was just like, Lord, I'm in the front row of this choir. I can't pass out. I can't topple over, and I can't throw up. And we were behind the stage, so for 2 hours, whatever was on stage, we were the mood maker for whatever went on stage. And if you've ever done Black Gospel, or if you've ever seen Black Gospel, that's a lot of energy. And but the ladies came, and so I just have to email them one-on-one and see what their impressions were, because now that I'm a little away for a little while, they might be really honest about their heart feelings. One of my former students from 13 years ago, who was not a returnee, she was very moved by, as she said, Mr. Graham's speech. And so I said to her, well, you have more questions? Yes, I have questions. Okay, I'll give you the name of 2 pastors I know personally that can answer your questions. The next time I called her, she was like, well, I'm too old to change. I'm not going to worry about this. So it's a challenge to follow up with the Franklin Graham Crusade. trying to think. Okay, I'm going to close the computer so it's not in the way. But so team has been in Japan for 125 years. I have not been there the whole time, but I've been there 25 of it. And targeting returnees is a new thing. We do have one gentleman who's retiring, who's worked with international students for 5 years. And he's done that ministry at the international church that we both attend. So it's exciting that team thought out of the box and made the partnership with JCFN, because I'm only about the third person in recent history to start a new ministry. Usually it's church planting or the Missionary Children's School. And one of our missionaries about 6 years ago started a cafe ministry. And then even before that, one of our other missionaries started a media ministry making films. And so when I came to the field leadership and said, I want to do returnee ministry, they actually had me write out in detail, okay, how are you going to do this? What are you going to do? And that was a good discipline, because when you're used to doing one thing and very comfortable in a ministry, I think it's a good spiritual discipline to really write it out and really pray it through about how God has called you to do that specific thing. So Japan needs your prayers, because this week, I don't want to think about what's going to happen with the suicide rate this week, because this week is the 5th anniversary of the tsunami, earthquake, and nuclear accident. And I was telling someone earlier, it's actually very hard for me to be away for the 5th anniversary, because I wasn't in Japan when it happened the first time. Just to give you a perspective on what happened in Japan, you can read a lot of it in National Geographic. This month has an article, and I'm sure Newsweek and Time will follow up as well. But usually most earthquakes in Japan are 20, 30 seconds. This was 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Try standing still on March 11th for that long. I can't even imagine being in an earthquake that long. But at that time, I was sleeping in America because I was on home assignment. But after that, I went back to Japan and assisted in disaster relief. There's not enough time here to show you a slideshow that I made, but Japan has the highest, well, not the highest, I don't think. Wait a minute. It's the 3rd highest suicide rate in the world. And for a modern first world country, that's pretty shocking. South Korea is number 1, Hungary is number 2. Just so you know, America's number 18. So it's the most expensive country to live in. We used to be really proud of the fact that the France field had the most expensive salary for team missionaries, until about 10 years ago, where team said, no, you guys in Japan have France beat. And we were kind of happy, sad about that. So, it's challenging to know that a lot of people are struggling. We have a number of people in our international church in Tokyo that have struggled with bipolar stuff, and we have a number of people that are just really, really struggling. And mental health care in Japan is not to the level that we have here, like getting talk therapy or getting group therapy or something for your struggles doesn't happen. People get medicated, but and they get medicated and they get a whole chunk of time off from work, but they don't get the tools to get better. I'm sure Midori would not mind, but my friend Midori, sometimes when she's not active on Facebook or doesn't show up at church for a while, we'll text her and see how she is. And she says, well, I'm a little overwhelmed with life. But she's really learned to tell us when she's struggling so that we pray with her as she's struggling. And hopefully this year she will be baptized. She's been a Christian for a number of years, but right around the time that all this stuff happened in Japan with the earthquake, it was just really upsetting to her. And so she's really started thinking about how to make that public profession with her faith. But even as much as she struggles, she's very honest about it. And she comes to prayer meeting and prays with a passion because she loves the Lord, even though she's struggling in her mind. So that is basically what I do. That was my timer I just heard. So if I have a wonderful bookmark that I love because it explains my life when I come on furlough. This is about stages of transition. And you can even see from back there, the second dip of when people return to their home country is even lower than the first culture shock dip. And this is where the people that I deal with are in that curve of readjusting to their home country. I made a joke my first furlough 20 odd years ago. I said, sometimes I'm a fish out of water. And I'm sure that's why the Lord has me now in returnee ministry and on home assignment furlough right at this time, so that I can better understand what the Japanese young people are facing, and cry with them and encourage them, because sometimes if they're a first-generation Christian, there's only certain people that they can open up their hearts to about their struggle coming back to Japan. So please pray for the people in the big picture, the Urbana bunch, the Lovelies, because they are the future of the Japanese church. It's not, the church is 1%. I mean, Christians is 1% of the population or less. And it's not the missionaries or the pastors that are going to change the numbers. It's the believers as they come back to Japan and get fully engaged in the culture and in their church and be vibrant witnesses for Christ. They're the ones that are going to change that number. And please pray for that as I head back in July.